turning now to Carter's afterward, alluding to the backlash he received for his outspoken position, he states, "Nobody enjoys being called ugly names, but what I've experienced is of little importance. It's of little importance compared to the half-century of suffering, death, and persecution and fear experienced by the people of Israel and Palestine. The people of Jerusalem, Gaza, and Ramallah have been shown in polls for decades to want peace. 60% of the Israeli public approve of the exchange of land for peace, and a January poll in 2006 indicates 81% of Palestinians want the same. There are few exceptions. We have seen the prospects of peace largely decline since the treaty between Israel and Egypt, achieved by the courage of Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin 28 years ago. Yitzhak Rabin was another hero, and like Sadat, was assassinated because he was a man of peace. History has shown that progress is possible only if the United States assumes its historic role of an honest broker. To play this essential role, coming back to one of the three historical points needed for going forward without a disaster, America must not be seen as in the pocket of either side. We must enjoy a degree of trust and respect from both sides. Again, watch the Thomas Massey interview with Tucker Carlson if you want to know what goes on in the Congress right now. He must always make, if you claim to be a patriotic American and want to know what's going on in your country, watch it. So we must always make clear our commitment to the security of Israel. But we cannot be peacemakers if American government leaders are seen as knee-jerk supporters of every action or policy of whatever Israeli government happens to be in power at the moment. So how low will you go? Well, we'll go as low as we're required to. Just, whatever government, that's what we do. This is the essential fact that must be faced. A powerful factor, especially in the political arena, is the domineering influence of the American-Israeli Public Committee Affairs, AIPAC, which exercises, as Carter says here, its legitimate goal of defending the policies of Israel's most conservative governments, and arouses maximum support in our country. Under AIPAC pressure, there are few significant countervailing voices in the public arena, and any balanced debate is still practically non-existent in the United States Congress and other presidential hopefuls. The American Friends of Israel who demand such subservience are in many cases sincere and well-intentioned people. But in this crucial issue, they are tragically mistaken against their own best interest. Their demands subvert America's ability to bring to Israelis what they most desperately need and want: peace and security within recognized borders. Today, the growth of Islamic extremism and the unprecedented hostility towards America in the Islamic world is directly related to the continuing bloodshed between Israelis and Palestinians. To think otherwise is foolish and dangerous. Okay, so instead of Daniel Pipes and Benjamin Netanyahu in 1981 creating a new enemy for America to fight, right? If you watch the Rambo movies, I don't know if it's Rambo 1, Rambo 2, he's rah-rahing with the Afghanis against, right? And as Texan Senator Ron Paul said, America radicalized the Islamic world. It's just one of these, points that's so hard to just get your head around when you first hear it. But it's true, right? And in a matter of years, right, these people were turned into demons and or they were demonized. I'm not, I'm only making the point that I'm making. I'm not, and I don't have time to explain all the possibilities for it. But I just want to end here with Jimmy Carter's own prayer, as he says, "My prayer on behalf of the children of the Holy Land and America is for the gift of courage to Israel, courage to Israeli and Palestinian leaders, but particularly to our elected officials of both parties at both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. The courage to face the facts and do what is necessary to return America to its honored and historic role as peacemaker." Jimmy Carter, signed as though it's with his blood, May 2007. That's what he gave his life for. And beautiful and important book. Makes so many nuanced points without which there is confusion reigning on these topics. So we do ask for his spirit in that sense to find peace, and us having the success to work towards peace.
Okay, is that the end of these slides?
And that's the end of the slides. Yeah, there.
So,
these. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'll put them back up again. Yeah.
Well, yeah. At various points, right? I had talked about the suffering that the Palestinians undergo, and the point, people have to see it, but we had to draw the line somewhere, Paul. So that's where I drew it. So hopefully you could edit out some of these.
Okay. No, that's good. Well, thank you very much indeed for that magisterial survey of Carter's views and the wider geopolitical realities in which we currently exist, of course. And I mean, I can't help be mindful of what happened in the last 24 hours, actually, where the the new UN ambassador, the nominee at the hearing in Washington, Stefanik, who was asked if she still backs Israel's so-called right to occupy the West Bank, and this is based on the so-called biblical principle. And she said yes, she does. This is the new United Nations representative of the United States. So we now know what the United States government thinks, that it's a biblical right for Israel to occupy Palestine. But what struck me about that, it's not just the West Bank. That's specifically what it was being referenced. But of course, for people, the biblical Jews, the biblical Christians, for them, the greater Israel is not just the West Bank. It's also Jordan, it's Egypt, it's Syria, it's Lebanon, it's parts of Iraq. I mean, it's a massive imperial project to take over a huge amount of the Middle East. If you're going to go down that path of the biblical thing, we're not just dealing with the West Bank, we're dealing with a massive imperial expansion of military power backed by the United States. Now, this is the stuff of nightmares, and it's just what staggers belief that the current regime in Washington, imperial regime, actually supports this publicly, openly, on the very lips of their new representative. This is I think Carter would be extremely alarmed by this development. Do you not think?
He would, of course, I've heard about this pronouncement. Haven't had the time to research it, but I've been very tempted, Paul, to put together the biblical case. I know that you had Dr. Ali Ata'i on, and he very capably went through the biblical sources for that. So I think that it is a political theology. I think that it's you need the Schofield Bible. You need and I'm speaking specifically about the Christian argument. I would love to have Dr. Gary Burge and others who are experts on this topic go through it if you don't think that it's been addressed sufficiently in the past, right? But just to put together all the biblical verses and show that, I mean, even in the Old Testament, right? So Ezekiel, with the fall of Jerusalem, very much states that it's because we did X, Y, Z, R, Q that we're being ejected into diaspora. I can't help but mention that it's Islam that allowed them to come out of bondage, right? So they were basically in and allowed those who wished to come back and rebuild and worship and clean up the temple, right? So that all happened within the early caliphs of Islam. So in other words, they were in Babylon and Iraq, and they were released from that and given a legal status and allowed to settle anywhere that they wished in the Islamic world, not only in ghettos as they eventually were in Europe. So it's just good to mention that. But I'm very happy to speak to everyone on their own principles. I think if we think that way, we'll be all right. So if you want to start from Christian principles, let's follow it all the way to the end. And I think people need to know. Would you consider that that's already been addressed sufficiently?
Yeah, by Ali Attai, as you say, on several very popular, very extensive and expansive programs on blogging theology, for sure. It's just this key point. I mean, last night, by the way, there's further news. According to the Guardian, some so-called Israeli settlers entered into the West Bank, smashing cars, burning property, and so on, after Trump announced he was lifting sanctions on the violent settlers. So this is a green light for the settlers to go in and literally invade and take property, homes. Even a nursery was attacked. Innocent people were killed. 8 people have died so far. And this is a direct consequence of Trump lifting these sanctions on these violent terrorist settler groups. And this happened in the last 24 hours of his presidency. So yes. It's but really, really quite extraordinary, I think. But the thing about the New Testament that struck me about, Christian support for Israel in the New Testament, if you read it, and I've actually read it, the New Testament, the new Israel is based around faith. It's based around faith in Christ, and it's a majoritarian Gentile faith. It's not based on geographical territory anymore. That's the old Israel, the old dispensation, the Old Testament idea. The New Testament doesn't have a territorial, it has an eschatological spiritual dominion. And that's the new Israel that Paul talks about. It's simply not equivalent in any shape or form conceivable with the state of Israel today, which is a secular Jewish nationalist state, which is not Christian. It just, Israel does not acknowledge Jesus as the Christ. I mean, everyone knows that. Therefore, it's not Israel, according to, say, Paul in Romans, in his absolutely magisterial letter, the most influential thing he ever wrote in the New Testament. It talks about this in chapters, I forget which chapters 7, 8, 9, explicitly. And, it's clear it's no longer a territorial, geographical state at all. It's a spiritual communion of Christians now. So this whole idea somehow Christianity supports the secular state of Israel is really bizarre. And you mentioned the Scofield Bible, but this is not grafted naturally on what Paul says at all. It's a very alien, odd idea that's somehow imported into the New Testament, in my view.
Part of the argument is that Scofield is trying to say that they never obtained the land that they were promised, so they're still waiting for the fulfillment. And and again, I think Dr. Adi has shown in a number of verses that that's just anti-biblical, right? I wanted to mention that also in the Gospel of John, there's a reference. Perhaps it's when there's the discussion of a Roman spearing Jesus, and he says, and he says, what he means is that his body is the temple, right? So it's as you said, Jesus is the temple. That's how he says it can be rebuilt in 3 days, etc. Because he's saying he is the new temple. That's right. And then there's the whole discussion of what we call dispensation. What's the term, Paul?
Dispensationalism, yeah.
Yes, but that each dispensation revokes the previous, right? And so that's why I'd like either to explore these issues more
supersessionism. Sorry, supersessionism.
That's right.
And that's been the standard Christian view since the beginning. It's there in Ignatius of Antioch, in the beginning of the 2nd century, that Christianity has replaced Judaism. You no longer follow Judaism; you follow Christianity, and Christianity is not centered on a state of Israel. It's centered on Christ, the Church, the sacraments, the heavenly Jerusalem. It's there in the Book of Revelation, the heavenly Jerusalem. It's not really centered on some kind of physical political entity with an army that rejects Jesus, because Jews in secular reject Jesus. They don't acknowledge him at all. So there's no relationship with Christianity whatsoever. It's an unbelieving state that needs to be converted to Jesus as the Messiah. So
right. So I mean, as you know, with Christian Zionism, then there is a belief that perhaps some of these Jews will convert to Christianity at the end. So they do accept some elements that this has to be centered, and certain things have to happen in historical Israel for the second coming. So yeah, you know, again, if you don't think that those issues have all been sufficiently dealt with, I know there are new arguments as well that Dr. Gary Birch in some of his books addresses, and but again, it's like Schofield, right? It's as long as someone is being funded to search for things, they can create more political theologies and squirm out of certain arguments. But as you said, I don't see it as legitimate on its own terms, right? These are your principles. This is your scripture. It says what it says, and it's relatively clear. And it's unfortunate that it's not easier to spread truth and justice. Ideology has a very strong hand right now, but that's why your channel and whatever efforts are possible, they're valuable, and hopefully people will listen. And if not, then it's a matter of testification, right? So
I think though people have listened, are listening, and get it and agree, because most of the world, as far as I can see, does see what you're saying. It's not like most of the world don't get it. Most of the world do get it. It's a minority of the world that refuse to get it, and that minority is centered around Western Europe and most of the United States and a few other bits and pieces, maybe Australia. But the vast majority of the planet, the United Nations, the countries of the world, international organizations, they all get it. People get it. It's just they don't have power, because power is centered around, even more so, Make America Great Now, this renewed imperial project to dominate the planet in the name of American nationalism. But people get it. Most people do. It's just they don't have the power yet. But one day, inshallah, things will change, because history is always changing. Things never remain static. It's one thing, amazing thing about our space-time continuing. It's not rigid and fixed. It's always developing. So I think eventually we will see a change of the profoundest kind, and justice will be done. But not today. It'll have to wait for another day. Certainly not while Trump is in power. But it will happen. I'm sure of that, God willing.